Some people moved to the suburbs for peace. Others moved to disappear. But one neighborhood was about to learn that the quiet man on the corner wasn't just another new resident. But the HOA president had no idea whose house she stepped into. No idea who lived behind those half-closed blinds. And no idea how close she was to the biggest mistake of her life. Because the man she'd been threatening with warnings and inspections wasn't just private, wasn't just polite, wasn't just patient. He was a federal judge. And when she crossed the line, she crossed the wrong person. This is what happened when HOA power met real authority. And how one moment of overreach changed an entire neighborhood forever. Federal Judge Elias Porter had spent decades inside courtrooms packed with tension, attorneys whispering strategies, jurors shifting in their seats, reporters scribbling every breath. After his wife Lydia passed away from an illness the year before, the house they lived in felt too large, too quiet, and too full of memories he wasn't ready to face. So he moved. A peaceful suburban cul-de-sac with maple trees, strolling families, and the distant sound of sprinklers. Elias hoped this new chapter would allow him a slow return to normal. He bought a charming cottage-style home with pale blue shutters and a porch Lydia would have adored. He imagined early mornings reading on the porch swing, evenings cooking simple dinners, and weekends tending a small vegetable garden, things he never had time for before. But the neighborhood came with something else. Something he wasn't expecting. The HOA. And at the head of it, Marjorie Hemsley. Marjorie was known for her clipboard, her strict tone, her habit of interpreting every HOA rule as if it were carved into stone, and her uncanny ability to appear exactly where you didn't want her. The moment Elias parked his moving truck, she approached like a homing missile. "Welcome to Willow Bend Estates," she said, voice crisp enough to cut paper. "We value order here. We expect compliance. You will find the HOA handbook in your mailbox, and I trust you'll read it thoroughly." Elias smiled politely. "Of course." She blinked, slightly thrown off by his calmness. Most new residents babbled nervously or apologized for non-existent rule violations. Elias simply existed. The next morning, notices began. Grass exceeds regulation length by approximately half an inch. Mailbox color appears non-standard. Please consult page 7 of handbook. Curtains visible from exterior do not match community-approved shades. Elias responded politely in writing. "Thank you for your notice. I will review the guidelines carefully." He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He simply replied with courtesy, which somehow frustrated Marjorie more than outright disobedience would have. Across the street lived Ms. Caldwell, a gentle elderly widow who immediately liked Elias. She learned his profession accidentally when she saw mail addressed to Honorable Elias J. Porter, United States District Judge. "Don't worry," she whispered with a wink. "Your secret is safe with me." Elias laughed softly. He preferred anonymity here. He wanted to be Elias the neighbor, not Judge Porter. But secrets stir curiosity, and curiosity attracts the wrong kind of attention. Marjorie saw the closed blinds, the quiet behavior, the unwavering politeness, and formed one conclusion. He was hiding something. Marjorie wasn't used to mysteries in her neighborhood. Willow Bend was predictable: rule followers, tidy lawns, identical mailboxes. She liked it that way. It made her feel structured, important, and in control. Elias Porter disrupted that world.
Why?
Because he didn't react. Whenever she issued petty warnings, he responded with calm logic, citing regulations more thoroughly than she could. This irritated her deeply. Most people panicked when she knocked at their door. Elias offered her tea. Her discomfort grew into obsession. She began walking past his house more frequently, always pretending to check on something else: a loose stone, a sidewalk crack, a tree branch dangerously low. In reality, she was studying his schedule, his habits, his patterns. She formed a small group of residents who enjoyed gossip more than gardening. They whispered theories about Elias. He works some secret night job. He must be storing expensive items. Maybe he's a writer who never wants to be bothered. Marjorie thrived on their guesses, adding fuel whenever she could. Then came the moment that lit the fuse. Elias received a large locked cabinet, the kind used for confidential documents or secure files, delivered by two movers. They carried it inside while Elias guided them calmly. Marjorie watched from behind a hedgerow, eyes narrowed. To her, this was proof. Not evidence, but emotional certainty. Elias was hiding something big, and she believed, with absolute confidence, that the HOA had the authority to investigate. That night, she sat at her dining table surrounded by papers, highlighting sections from the HOA handbook, circling phrases like right to inspect property for compliance, community safety checks. She interpreted these lines more broadly than any reasonable person would. To her, they meant she could check anything, anytime. She convinced herself it was her duty. And by morning, she made a plan. The day was quiet, sunlight filtering through clouds, most neighbors away at work. A perfect moment, in Marjorie's mind, for a compliance check. She used a spare HOA master key, one she had kept despite being told it was for emergencies only. Approaching Elias' door, she rehearsed excuses. I was concerned about a leak. This is just a routine inspection. Your mailbox paperwork seemed incomplete. Excuses she hoped she'd never need. She unlocked the door and entered. The house was spotless. Cozy. Warm. Sunlight glowed through the curtains, highlighting a simple bookshelf, a small fountain on the table, and framed photos of Elias with his late wife. Marjorie ignored all of that. Instead, she went straight to snooping. She checked closets, peered behind doors, opened drawers, snapped photos of anything she didn't understand. She approached the large locked cabinet, the one that sparked her imagination, and tugged at the handle. It didn't budge. She frowned, convinced something scandalous was inside. Then she entered the home office. That's where everything changed. On one wall, a framed certificate appointing Elias as a federal judge. Commendations from different courts. Letters of thanks from federal officials. His judicial oath, elegantly placed in a shadow box. And finally, his formal courtroom portrait. Marjorie's breath caught. Her vision blurred. Her knees almost gave out. She had broken into the home of a federal judge. Not a teacher. Not a banker. Not a retiree. A federal judge. Before she could flee, the front door clicked. Elias stepped into the office doorway, grocery bag still in hand. He saw her. He saw the open drawers. He saw her trembling. Silence hung in the air. Then he spoke gently, far more gently than she deserved in that moment. Ms. Hemsley, please sit down. Marjorie realized instantly. Her life was about to change in ways she never expected. Marjorie sat on the edge of the chair, hands shaking, eyes darting everywhere except at Elias. She expected shouting. She expected threats. She expected the thunderous voice of a judge delivering consequences. Instead, Elias remained distressingly calm. Do you know why what you've done is serious? He asked softly. Marjorie tried to defend herself with scattered excuses. I was just checking the HOA allows. There were concerns. Elias calmly responded. The HOA does not have the authority to enter private property without homeowner consent, and especially not when the homeowner is absent. He gently explained. The laws protecting private property, the boundaries of HOA regulations, the ethical lines she crossed, the personal invasion she committed. Marjorie's defenses crumbled. Her voice cracked, not in anger, but shame. For the first time, she wasn't the one in control. She wasn't the one correcting others. She wasn't the authority. Elias continued. I could report this, and it would be justified. But I believe that intention matters. You weren't trying to cause harm, you were trying to feel in control. Tears welled in Marjorie's eyes. She admitted something she had never said aloud. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I don't know who I am if I'm not keeping everything in order. Elias nodded, not agreeing, but understanding. He offered her two paths. He formally reports her, which could lead to legal and community consequences. She steps down as HOA President, admits her overreach, and participates in reforming the HOA to be fair, transparent, and compassionate. Marjorie sat in silence for a long time. Then she whispered, "I'll resign." For the first time in years, she felt the weight of her own rigidity and how much hurt it had caused others. Marjorie's resignation rippled gently through the community. People didn't know the details, only that she stepped down for personal reasons. A new HOA board formed. Friendly, balanced, focused on support rather than policing. Elias was invited to be an informal advisor. He accepted quietly, offering suggestions that helped transform the HOA from a source of anxiety into one of genuine community. Marjorie began her personal rebuilding journey. She apologized to neighbors she had once reprimanded for minor infractions. She helped Ms. Caldwell with her garden and even joined a weekly community book club, her first voluntary group activity in years. She and Elias eventually shared respectful conversations whenever they crossed paths. She thanked him, not for sparing her, but for showing her the harm strictness without empathy can cause. Elias, in turn, found something unexpected: peace, healing, connection. He planted tomatoes and lavender in his backyard, something his wife always dreamed they'd grow together. Every morning he'd water them, feeling grounded in a way he hadn't in years. As the story closes, he stands on his porch at sunrise, sipping tea, watching neighbors walk dogs, children ride bikes, and Marjorie laugh lightly with Miss Caldwell. A neighborhood once ruled by fear now thrived with warmth. Final line: some justice is written in books. Some justice is spoken in courtrooms. But the most meaningful justice is the kind that changes people.